Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon, almost Chag Sameach. Here we are preparing for Chanukah. I'm all dressed up. Even though it's a pajama top, doesn't matter, still counts, because it's Chanukah, right? And so welcome everyone. I see Shelly and see Rocky, ready there, very good, very nice. And we are going to study a little bit about Chanukah today. It's never too much information about this beautiful celebration that we have every year. And even though it's going to be a little bit weird this time with all the restrictions and everything, I hope you got your candles. We had lots of media requests to comment about these restrictions, that we couldn't have candles. Now we can have candles, but not until Saturday. So it's such a mishigas. It's an amazing time. Well, what can I say? I don't know what was your experience. So if you all want to let me know, type it in the chat. I would like to know your experience with Chanukah and everything. So I will give it a couple more minutes to see who else is going to connect today. And even if they miss the first part of the class, doesn't really matter, because remember that we always leave everything there. So it's not a big deal. So let me change something here. And I forgot to do something very important. That is to where am I? I don't know why I cannot see it. Anyway, never mind. I cannot do what I was trying to do with the computer, but it works anyway. Okay, so we are going to study a little bit about Chanukah that we start tonight. There are many things that you probably already know. That is that on Chanukah we eat pretty much oily things. Oh, by the way, before I forget, in a few minutes, somebody is going to come to call me to go upstairs in my house, because I have a technician working on the dishwasher and I have to go pay him before he leaves. So, yeah, it's going to be very clear when that time is, and I'm going to ask you in advance to forgive me for abandoning you for a few minutes. So maybe I should leave you with a question or something. Okay, Chanukah. What do we do on Chanukah? Let's start with this. Here we go. We start tonight, right? And we are going to celebrate for 8 days and night. So tonight we start the 25th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev, which this year happens to be December 10th in the evening. Every year is different because remember, the Jewish calendar is lunisolar. That means that it basically mainly follows the moon cycles. And the civil calendar is solar. It follows the sun. So it's never exactly the same, because the lunar year is shorter. It's 11 days shorter than the solar year. So that's why we have this we are never on sync. So it's never the same date that we have in the civil calendar. And I said the Jewish calendar is lunisolar because we still have to be able to celebrate, for example, Pesach on the spring. So once in a while we have to add a full month, which is going to be the month of Adar. We have to add one full month to keep it pretty much in sync with the seasons. Okay? That's why sometimes you will see that Chanukah is at the same time of Christmas. Sometimes, like this year, it's not. It's a little earlier. Yeah. Shelly, you said, just remember, Rabbi, he will want real gold, not a gold foil covered chocolate kid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think and the kids in these days, they don't care much about gold. They want some different kind of presents. So yeah. And you can see there in the photo in front of you that we have the latkes that we eat, and over there, even more there, we have the sufganiyot, or the jam busters, as we call it here in Winnipeg. I believe in other places they call it differently. I think jelly donuts, something like that. But here we call it jam busters. but it's the same. Hebrew is sufganiot, and also we have the latkes, and in Hebrew is levivot. Two things that we eat in Chanukah. What do they have in common? They're both fried, because Chanukah also celebrates the miracle of the oil. And this is exactly what I want to bring to you first. Because if you ever paid attention at the prayer book, when in Chanukah we add a prayer, it's called Al Anisim. Hello, Andrea. Welcome. Welcome to the class. So we have a prayer, Al Anisim, which means for the miracles. You see that is plural, which implies that it was more than one miracle. We usually know the miracle of the oil, and that I will say was miracle number 1. But there is another big miracle that is celebrated in Chanukah, and we are going to see that in a minute. And then at the end of the day, it's a combination of at least these two miracles, and that's why in the prayer we said for the miracles, plural, because we are talking about multiple things that happen during this time of the year. Okay? But there is more about this time of the year specifically, and we are going to study a little bit more about that. Hello, Terry. I will take the chocolate. Chocolate donut? That's what you mean? Or the chocolate gelt? I probably talking chocolate gelt. Because sometimes we have chocolate donuts in these days, right? Who knows the feeling? In Argentina, it used to be dulce de leche inside the donuts, which is amazing. I don't know if you know what dulce de leche is. I'm pretty sure Andrea knows. She's from Colombia. I'm wondering if they have dulce de leche in Colombia. Maybe they call it differently. Donut or gelt. Yeah. Yep. That's what I thought. Andrea knows what dulce de leche is, which is basically boiled condensed milk. And it's delicious, and sometimes we use it as filling for the donuts on Chanukah. Yeah. Okay, but let's talk about miracles. And probably one of the miracles is to eat all this food and not to put 40 pounds. Well, maybe it's a miracle for some people. For some others, it is no miracle and you just put on the 40 pounds. I don't know. So, first miracle. Let's talk about that. For this, we have to go back to Andrea. By the way, there are a couple of places here in Winnipeg that they sell products from Latin America, from South America, so you can get dulce de leche there. Hello, Eric. We have dulce de leche too. Yeah, it's delicious. I think a different part of the world, they call it differently. And it's not caramel, because caramel is not necessarily dairy. Sometimes they call it caramel, but it's not. Dulce de leche is something else. You have to try it to know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's talk about Chanukah, the first miracle. This is the miracle of the oil. And we learned about this in the Talmud. This is how we know it. In fact, it's interesting because the Talmud put pretty much all the emphasis on the miracle of the oil. And that's it. It's a very interesting thing. So he said, what is the reason for Chanukah? This is the way the Talmud opens the teaching about Chanukah. It doesn't say what is Chanukah, it says why we celebrate Chanukah. Which is an interesting question, because it's almost like they were celebrating something called Chanukah, but now we need an explanation of what exactly are we celebrating. Maybe it's not clear. Maybe it wasn't clear back then why they had this celebration at this time of the year, and the Talmud felt that they have to make it clear. We'll see. As our rabbis taught, on the 25th day of Kislev, the 8th day of Chanukah began, during which it is forbidden to eulogize the dead or to fast. Okay? Two things that we still do in these days. For when the Greeks entered the sanctuary of the temple, they defile all of the oil. When the Hasmoneans, by the way, that was a family of priests, the Hasmoneans. The Hasmoneans overpowered them and were victorious. They searched, but could find only one cruse of oil that was intact with the seal of the high priest. It contained only sufficient oil to kindle the menorah for 1 day. But a miracle occurred, and they were able to light with it for 8 days. The next year, they designated these days as a festival with the recitation of hymns of praise and thanksgiving. So, in other words, what happened here is the Talmud says that we have this celebration because of this miraculous thing that happened. The Greeks pretty much contaminated all the oil that was in the temple, except for one cruse. And this is very important to say. It's not that they put anything inside the oil to make it not kosher. Sometimes you have to understand how the rules for kosher or kashrut work. I don't know if you ever order kosher food in an airplane. Have you ever done that? And it's interesting. I do it all the time. So before it's time to have the meals in the airplane, the flight attendants will come to your seat with a wrapped package with the kosher food. They are not allowed to open it. You have to open it, and then you can pass it back, and they will put it in the oven, and they will serve it to you. So in other words, it's very important that for many kosher things, the seal has to be opened by a Jew. Okay? So this is the same. All the sacred oil that they had at the temple to be used at the menorah, it had a seal that it was what's called the seal of the high priest. But in other words, it's not much difference of the OU symbol that you will have on food, right? It was just to say that it was kosher. So it looks like the Greeks, they opened it. They broke all these seals. And it doesn't matter that they didn't touch the content, because the seal was broken. It's not kosher anymore. That's the way it is. So they couldn't use it to light the menorah once they enter to the temple again. So they had a problem here because they calculated that it was going to take around 8 days to create more oil. So they said, okay, it is what it is, but at least we have oil for 1 night. So they lit the menorah with that oil, and oh, miracle, it lasted for 8 until new kosher olive oil came to the temple. Remember, that's the key word, I guess, kosher. They could probably get more oil around, but it was not kosher. It was not up to the standards that they needed for that menorah. So when you get kosher from the supermarket, from the restaurants, they do the same things. The hospital, everything. Yeah, you will see that it comes with a seal. With a seal. And so it's very complicated, the words of kashrut and what make it kosher or not. And there are different standards, don't get me wrong. But this one, at the time of the temple, they were very meticulous with whatever they would put in the menorah. One of the most sacred objects of the temple, other than the Ark of the Covenant, right? So it's very important that they did it this way. But again, the miracle is that oil supposed to last for 1 night, lasted 8. Now, there is a controversy about that because some rabbis said, well, actually the first night is not really a miracle, right? Because it's supposed to last for 1 night. So what I was saying that is the miracle of the 8 days, it should be only 7. First night is not miraculous. Well, there are different explanation of why we'll still take the first night as part of the miracle. Explanation number 1, it is because they decided to go ahead and light the menorah anyway, even though they knew that it's going to be only for 1 night. Yeah, you know what? You could say, why bother? Let's wait for 8 days, and then we will light the menorah, and we could keep it lit forever, right? Why do we want to do it now? It's going to be 1 night and then nothing for another 7 until more oil comes. But nevertheless, they overcame that negative mindset. And some say that that's why they were rewarded with the miracle of the other 7 days, because they decided to go ahead and try anyway. Beautiful message. So that is what we are celebrating the first night. the fact that sometimes we attempt to do things, even though we know that most likely we will fail, but we do it anyway. So that will be the message of the first night, and that's why we celebrate an extra night of Chanukah. The other explanation is that the miracle of the first night is the miracle of nature. Because the fact that the oil could be used as fuel, and then you can get fire from there, come on, it is a miracle in itself. So why oil and not water, for example, right? Because water doesn't burn, but oil does. It's fascinating, the fact that we can get fire out of oil. And yes, we say, well, but that's nature. But the nature is a miracle as well. Sometimes we don't realize that. So that is the miracle that we celebrate the first night. So different explanation of why 8 nights and not just 7. Okay? But this is all about the way the Talmud is describing Chanukah. Now, there is a big miss here, because it's not talking at all about the miraculous fight against the Greeks. Think it this way. There were a little bit of rebels, the Israelites, the Jews at the time, that they went to war against the mighty Greeks, and they won. It's a huge miracle. But the Talmud doesn't seem to say anything about that. At least not to the extent that it's talking about the little cruse of oil. If you ask me, the fact that the oil lasted a little longer, yeah, it's a miracle. But don't we have, better miracles than that in the Bible or in history? And why are we making such a big deal? Well, it looks like the rabbis didn't want to talk too much about the Hasmoneans in general. Because remember that the Hasmoneans were amazing for a generation when they defeat the Greeks. But then they became high priests and rulers of the land, which is not necessarily the job for a priest. It was the first time that the power was concentrated in a family of priests. Before it was a separation. The king belonged to different tribes, never a Kohen. But now they have the priesthood and kinghood in one family. And it was good for a while, but it then started to degenerate, and they became corrupt. And you can follow historically what happened with that family, and they ended up with the destruction of the Second Temple. So it's not a happy ending, and I wouldn't be surprised that was one of the reasons why the Talmud decided to kind of ignore a little bit the Hasmoneans, and they didn't give him too much honor because of what happened afterwards. Pretty much at the time that Talmud was written, the name Hasmonean was something great in the past, but not so good in the present times. But it doesn't mean that it's not represented in Jewish tradition, because if you read in the Siddur, in the prayer book, it seems to be all the opposite. All the emphasis is on the war and nothing about the oil. Look at this. And this is the second miracle that I was saying. One is the oil, the second miracle was the war. Look at this. This is mind-blowing. It says in the Siddur, this is what we add during the services. We are grateful for the miracles, the salvation, the mighty deeds, the victories, and the battles that you performed for our ancestors in those days at this time. In the days of Matityahu, son of Yohanan, the high priest, the Hasmonean, and his son, when the evil Greek kingdom aroused against your people Israel to make them forget your Torah and to cause them to transgress the laws that you willed. In your great mercy, you stood by them in their time of distress. You fought their struggle, judged their claim, and retaliated on their behalf. You delivered the strong in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few, the impure in the hands of the pure, the evil in the hands of the righteous, and the wanton in the hands of those who were occupied with the study of your Torah. And for yourself you made a great and sanctified name in your world. And for your nation Israel You wrought a great victory and deliverance, even this very day. Afterwards, your children entered the precincts of your house, cleared out your sanctuary from the idols that has been placed there, purified your temple, and kindled lights in the courtyards of your holy place. And they designated these 8 days of Chanukah to offer thanks and praise to your great name. What is the oil? Nowhere to be found there. Nowhere to be found. It's very, very interesting. So, do you have any theory? Have you ever heard about this? The fact that the Talmud doesn't mention the war and the Siddur doesn't mention the oil. Have you ever heard that? Any comments about this? I see that other than food, this chat is very quiet today. Okay. Okay, Terry, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so these are the 2 miracles. But at the end of the day, today we celebrate both miracles and we remember both whenever we celebrate Chanukah. Okay? So, but I mentioned before when the Talmud said, what's the reason for Chanukah? And there are some theories that there was always some kind of celebration around the time of the winter solstice. This is not something new. I read once from a point of view of Kabbalah that they will say that Chanukah happened at the time that happened because it's a cosmic time that is prone to miracles. And why is that? Because the winter solstice will be the time where we can observe that the days are going to start becoming longer and longer, and the nights shorter and shorter. So how can I say this? In mystical language, what we say is that light defeated darkness. And it's a time where there is more light coming into this world. So they would say that's why this is a time for miracles. But at the same time, this is exactly what we are celebrating in Chanukah, that light defeated the darkness. Or in the words of the rabbis, the Jews defeated the Greek. It's kind of the same concept, that finally light prevailed. Finally, the good guys won. Finally, the evil brought by the Greeks to the land of Israel was defeated. So it's all part of the same symbol. But it's all about this celebration of light. And it's all around the time of the solstice. And I almost like to say that even if you look around, all the other cultures that they will have some kind of celebration during this time is about the same concept, light defeating darkness. Even Christianity, if you try to rationalize the concept of Christmas, the Christian world is celebrating the coming of their Messiah, right? Which basically was also another concept of the light who came to defeat darkness. You see, and then, it's during the winter solstice, and the light came to it. It's all the same concept. But we have our own celebration of the light defeating darkness, and it's all about Chanukah, which, by the way, the word Chanukah could be understood in many different ways. One meaning is Chanukah means inauguration, because there was the re-inauguration of the temple after the Jews entered, they cleaned it up, and that's the way it was, right? I'll be right back. The guy is calling me upstairs. So think about that, and I will give you another explanation of Chanukah, or the word Chanukah when I come back. Don't go anywhere. Yes?
Wait, so the new one did not work at all. So I put the old one back.
How come?
It the new one, yeah, the new one did not turn on. So,
let me know when, because the dishwasher works. It's just that doesn't.
yeah, all right.
Okay, can you
Yeah,
take yourself out?
Yeah, I'll order a new one.
Okay, thank you. And I'm back. No miracle for my dishwasher, it doesn't work. Need to order another piece. Okay, so let's go back to Chanukah. Explanation number one of the word Chanukah is that it means inauguration. Number two, the rabbis noticed that the word Chanukah also comes from the word chinuch, which means education. So this is defeating darkness through education, in this case through Jewish education. It's a very interesting thing. So we celebrate not just that we enter to the temple, it's a celebration of Jewish identity. Now we can study our Torah again. Now we can educate our children the Jewish way if we choose to do so. So that's another thing that we celebrate in Chanukah, and within the name Chanukah is the word Chinuch. And the other one is Chanu. Sometimes people read two words, Chanu and Ka. Chanu means they rested, and Ka, which is Chav Hey, means 25, because they fought against the Greek and they rested on the 25th day of Kislev. That's another way to read the name Chanukah. Three meanings with the same word. It's very, very interesting. In fact, there is the theory that the whole idea of the Jews was to finish the war before Sukkot. But they couldn't. It was a little longer. I guess the Greeks were more difficult to defeat than they expected. So they couldn't celebrate Sukkot that year. And then eventually on the 25th of Kislev, they finally rested. The war was over. And when they entered the temple, the first thing they did is to celebrate the late Sukkot, which lasts how many days? 8 days. We count with Shmini Atzeret. So that's another explanation of maybe why we celebrate 8 days on Chanukah. And very interesting. Thank you, Rocky. 8. Very good. So, and I mentioned before that many cultures celebrated the winter solstice. The Talmud also acknowledges that this was a known time of the year for humanity, that even Adam, the first human being, was aware of something special about the winter solstice. And the Talmud brings a midrash about it. Look at this. When Adam noticed that the days were getting shorter, he said, "Is the world becoming darker because of my sins? Will it soon return to chaos?" And this is what God meant when he punished me with mortality. So he prayed and fasted for 8 days. When the period prior to the winter solstice arrived, he saw that the days were now growing longer. He realized, this is the way of the world. Adam then made 8 days of celebration, and that's why, if you read this midrash, you will understand why we cannot fast during these 8 days. The same way that Adam fasted before, because he said, the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It's going to be an eternal night. What did he know? He didn't know that it was a cycle. And then eventually he realized, this is a cycle. Now the days are getting longer, and he made a celebration, and he basically did all the opposite from fasting. And that's one of the things. But it's a clear midrash, even though in Talmudic words, right, that this was a known time of the year that people celebrated way before Chanukah was a thing. And it's when we see the rabbi spinning this into Adam, the first human being, this means that who knows how long people have been celebrating the winter solstice. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. Shelley, you said there are lots of 8-day observances in Torah. Pesach is also 8 days. So what's special? The 8 days, the number 8 is special in Judaism. It's is the day of miracles, also number 8. If you see this, the nature, the cycle of nature is 7 days, right? There is not 8 days. After the 7th, go back to the first. So the 7th completes the cycle. So whenever you're talking about 8, is something that is above nature, supernatural, a miracle. So that's why it's not a coincidence that we have Chanukah with 8 days to celebrate a miracle. 8 days is the day of the circumcision, and the 8 days is a special number. In Judaism, it is the number that symbolizes miracle in the same way that the 7 symbolizes nature. And I will going to leave it there because it's a very interesting. We can be talking all day about numbers. That's not what this class is about. So, the Talmud, let's go back to the Talmud to understand how the Talmud suggests that we should be celebrating Chanukah. They said it clearly, but it looks like even the way it was suggested, it was not the way it was observed. Look at this. A rabbi's thought, the precept of Chanukah requires 1 light for each man and his household. That's it. But the Talmud said, you want to celebrate Chanukah? You know what you have to do? 1 candle, only 1 candle per night, per household. So you don't, that's it, 1 candle per household. Period. But then it says, those who seek to beautify the mitzvot, okay, these are the people, we all know these people, right? That whatever the law said, it's not enough. I want to do it more. I want to do it more stringent. So if the law said that I have to have kosher milk, kosher milk is not enough. It has to be Chalav Israel, right? I can use, regular flour. It has to be Pas Israel. So there are people that they like to add to the commandments with the rationale that they are beautifying the mitzvah. Because the minimum, it's okay, but I want to do something more out of love of God. Okay? So they said, those who seek to beautify the mitzvot, they kindle a single light for each household member. So the only thing these people did was, instead of having only 1 candle per household, it would be 1 candle per person. Okay? And that would be fine. But that's not the way we observe Chanukah. Because back in the day, it said concerning those who are particularly eager to beautify the mitzvot, in other words, the ultra-Orthodox, right? That they want to really do something above and beyond the law out of love of God. So those people, which the way is presented here seems to be that those were the minority. So for those people, the house of Shammai will say, the way these people used to do it is on the first day, they light 8 candles. Right? Just like this. You can see here, all the candles. But that would be, for according to Shammai, the first day or the first night. And then decreases in number each day. So according to Shammai, first night of Chanukah, that means tonight, you should have all the candles, and then the last night of Chanukah, only 1. Okay? But Beit Hillel says, no. On the first day, we candle 1 light, and then we increase day by day. And then the Talmud said the house of Shammai considers the day remaining, and the house of Hillel considers the day elapsed. I don't know how that's explained. It doesn't make sense to me, because that's, never mind. But there is more. Because the Talmud will also say that Beit Shammai, pretty much. But then, yes, Rocky, I say it. You say it. The glass half full of half empty. Yeah, but the Talmud, I edited this text, but the Talmud also says that the rationale for Shammai was the sacrifices on Sukkot. Okay, remember I told you that there is a theory that the first Chanukah was actually a late celebration of Sukkot. So Shammai will say in Sukkot, if you go read it in the Torah, the first day of Sukkot, they will do lots of sacrifices, and then the number of animals being sacrificed every day of Sukkot will decrease every day. So Shammai will say we should do the same with the Chanukah because it represents the sacrifices of Sukkot. But Hillel saw an opportunity here. And it says, Hillel's reason for requiring a continual increase from 1 to 8 lights is the principle that in sacred matters we elevate and do not lower the degree of sanctity. You see, in the Talmud we say, Ma'alin v'kodesh ve'ein moridim. You should remember that, because we use that for many things. That principle is applied for many other halachic decisions. Ma'alim b'kodesh ve'ein moridim. We always increase holiness and we never decrease it. And that is something that sometimes is applied if, by any reason, you want to start being more stringent in the way you observe the mitzvot. You know, sometimes the commandments will have multiple ways to observe it. You can do the basic, or you can make it more stringent. As I give you the example, for example, you can have just regular kosher milk, or you can have halav Israel, a kind of milk that a Jew was involved in the processing from the very beginning. You can get it sometimes the supermarket if you know where to look for it. It's more expensive, and there is no difference in the quality of the milk, except that it has a different halachic status. You don't have to drink that one, but some people want to do it. Hidur mitzvah, they feel beautifying the mitzvah by doing it this way. But because Hillel said, Ma'alim b'kodesh ve'em moridim, if by any reason you started to drink this halav Israel, you can never go back to regular kosher milk, because you never decrease in holiness. So you should be careful when you take these stringencies in your life, because then you can never go back to a lower standard. Okay? And we learn this from Hillel. So as I said, Hillel saw an opportunity here to teach something, which is great. Which is great. Okay, so let's start summarizing here some of the concepts from Chanukah, and to do that, I would like to present to you a text from the Rambam, from Maimonides. And this is what he wrote about it, and you will see that in his text that he wrote in the Middle Ages, he already combined the two miracles that we were talking about at the beginning of the class. And this is what Maimonides says. Number one, when the Greeks ruled during the Second Temple period, they oppressed Israel with harsh decrees. They banned their religion and did not allow them to be engaged in Torah and mitzvot. They also robbed their wealth and invaded their daughters and entered the shrine and raised havoc, defiling all that was pure. And Israel suffered greatly from them until the God of our fathers had mercy and saved us from them. For the high priest of the Hashmonean house arose and killed them and saved Israel from them. A kingdom was made from the priest, and the kingship was returned to Israel for more than 200 years until the destruction of the Second Temple. Okay? This is a little bit of historical context that he wrote, so we understand why we rebelled against the Greeks and why the miracles happened, right? He was a little bit back in time to put it in the right context. And this is what happened. He's tried to let us feel all the suffering that people were feeling in the land of Israel in those days. This wasn't just, the provincial government saying that Chanukah candles are not essential, right? which, by the way, for our international friends, they are, I don't know, Terry, if you're still there, we had a controversy here in Winnipeg that because we're in code red because of COVID, the government made a list of essential things that we could buy on the shelves of the stores, and all other things the stores are not allowed to sell, whatever is not essential. So for some strange reason, the Chanukah candles were considered not essential. I think it's an overlooked. It's a maybe they never came to a Torah L'chaim with Rabbi Mass, right? So what did they know? That we need the candles. But Quebec, they went to the extra mile. That said, it's okay to get together in Christmas, but not for Hanukkah. But this was just an overlook. They didn't realize that, and now they corrected it, and we are going to be able to have the Hanukkah candles. And it's not that we couldn't have it; you just have to order in advance and then do a curbside pickup. Nevertheless, but what my point is, we are not talking about that. Yeah, is the I call the what I call is the Chanukah scandal, right? Scandal here in Winnipeg. But now it's all good. It's all good now. So, but let me go back to my money. What he's trying to say is this is not just a provincial regulation, right? Because you still have a way to order it online or other ways, right? These were real restrictions targeting specifically against Jews, and not out of ignorance, but out of malice. They had a systematic way to oppress the people of Israel on their land. And the goal was for the people of Israel to abandon and to ignore the teachings of the Torah and to assimilate to the Greek culture. And there was a point where the Israelites, the Jews, they couldn't take it any longer, and they rebelled against the Greeks. And then we know the end of the story when they finally defeated the Greeks, and they entered the temple, they cleaned the temple, they light the menorah, only one cruse of oil, but miraculously ended up lasting for 8. So let's continue with Maimonides. He will say this. He said, when Israel reigned victorious over her enemies and destroyed them, it was the 25th of Kislev. They entered the shrine and found only one cruse of oil, which would suffice for one day, and yet they lit their lamps from this oil for 8 days until they pressed new olives and produced new or more pure kosher oil. Okay, so Maimonides is talking about, he started with the war, and now specifically talking about the oil. And finally, he says, for this reason, the sages of that generation decreed that these 8 days, which begin on the 25th of Kislev, are days of celebration and praise. On these days, we light candles each of the 8 evenings in the entryways of homes in order to reveal and publicize the miracles of these days, which are known as Chanukah. But in these days, we kind of put it in the near a window, because the whole idea is to make the miracle public. So you have to put it in a way where other people can see it. It is forbidden to eulogize and fast on these days, just as it is on Purim, and lighting candles is commanded from rabbinic tradition in the same way as the Megillah reading in Purim. So in other words, what he's saying that the menorah that we light on Hanukkah is not really a Torah law, it's rabbinic law. The rabbis decided that this is the way, not because it's written in the Torah, just because they decided that this is going to be a new tradition. I always say to my students that you have 3 basic ways to learn halakha, to learn Jewish law. One is called the Oraita, which means things that they are clearly written in the Torah, or sometimes not so clearly written, but the rabbis kind of find it in the Torah, okay? They will show you a verse where it said something, and said, this, we do this because of this verse, right? If that's the case, the law is the Oraita. It's coming from the Torah. Then you have the Rabbanan, something that it was instituted by the rabbis. This is a perfect example. Or the reading of the Megillah in Purim was instituted by the rabbis. I would say that is halacha, the Rabbanan, coming from the rabbis. And the third one is minhag, tradition. Something that started as a tradition could become a law. Perfect example, the kippah. Started as a tradition, but now it's halacha, it's Jewish law. Whenever we study, whenever we pray, we put on a kippah. Shelley, what do you say? In Israel, especially in Jerusalem, people put their Chanukahs outside and sit out singing songs and welcoming people walking past. It's very beautiful. Yeah, I challenge you to do it here in Winnipeg, in windy Peg, especially Portage and Maine, to see who can light a menorah outside here in Winnipeg. By the way, yeah, Winnipeg is very windy, or could be very windy. And yeah, but I know in Israel they usually light oil menorahs, which is depends how deep your dish is. Could be really, really well protected from. No, they use oil, and it could be very protected from wind. Israel is surprised. Yeah, the window thing is not really the way. You can see it. They say the entryways of the house. And some people will still do that. Even if the door is closed, they have to put it next to the door, not next to the window. But I guess people start to do it in the window because that's the spirit of the law, the spirit of what Rambam is trying to say, that one of the important things in Chanukah is to publicize the miracle. So that's why we put it in a way where other people can see the menorah and they will know about the miracle of the oil. And that's why you will see also Chabad, they put menorahs everywhere in the city. They have it just to make the miracle public. It's not uncommon to do that. Okay, so how do we light the menorah? Yeah, the menorah van. But here they put one at the hospital, one at the school, one at the Jewish club. So wherever you go, you will see a menorah before you enter to the place. And so let's talk a little bit about the blessings, because this is something that we have to do tonight, right? And this is the way it's done. So you have here the blessing. We have three blessings basically, which I'm going to explain in a minute. We have blessing number 1, number 2, and number 3. But let's go back to blessing number 1. Remember, the first thing you're going to do tonight is you have to light the shamash. It's the extra candle we have. And you might be surprised that shamash is not there to light the other candles. The shamash is there to illuminate the room. I know, it's crazy, because the other 8 candles are there only to publicize the miracle, not to illuminate the room. But if you don't put the shamash, it's almost like the other 8 are also illuminating the room, so it takes away from the purpose. So they add one more candle that is not halachic, so basically it's almost like an illusion. That's the way giving the light to the room, or at least you cannot distinguish which one it is, so halachically it's fine. So that's why we add one candle that we call the shamash. Because thinking about this way, if you have a menorah that is the oil one, you cannot use the shamash to light the other lights. It just doesn't work that way. You still need an extra one. It will be the 10th. It will be a candle that you use to light all the lights. Okay? So first you do is to light the shamash without the blessings. You do it first. After you do the shamash, you sing the blessings. The first time you light the menorah, which is usually the first night, but not necessarily. What if you miss it? What if the first night you cannot light the menorah? So that's what the Rabbi said. The first time you light the menorah, you're going to recite 3 blessings. And then every other night of Chanukah, only 2 blessings. So the order is like this. Shamash, blessing number 1, blessing number 2, and if necessary, blessing number 3. And then you're going to light the candle for the night. And you have to do it this way because in Judaism, except for the Shabbat candles, we always bless before we do. We always say the blessing before we do the action. And this is not an exception. So first we say first the shamash, because it's not part of the menorah technically. Then you say the blessings, and then after you finish the last blessing, you are going to start lighting the candles. First blessing goes like, I'm going to sing it for you. It goes like this, and I'm going to put a little bit of effect on my voice so it sounds more professional. It goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik nar shel Chanukah. Number 2. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim ba'azman hazeh. Number 3, first night only. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'eheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And then you light the candles, and then it's officially the first day of Chanukah, first, second, and so forth. There you have the every day of Chanukah and when you say it, right? Always after nightfall, except so on Shabbat you have to do it before the Shabbat candles, which in Winnipeg is going to be before 4:12 p.m. And on Saturday at home you do it after the Havdalah, and the Havdalah cannot be done before 5:23 p.m. So that's a couple of things to have in mind. Okay, and always remember, the blessings are recited before lighting the menorah. Very important to remember. And then after that, some people will sing, Anerot halalu anachnu madlikim, Anerot halalu anachnu madlikim, al hanisim ve'al haniflaot ve'al hateshuot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita la'avoteinu bayamim hahem bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. And then after that, you can sing Ma'ot Zur or other Chanukah songs if you want. I have a little dreidel, all that. You can play with the dreidel game, and you can go and eat your donuts and your latke. Yeah, looking forward to that. I am. So, any questions that you might have, I would like to know. Terry, no question, just smiley face. Very good. Very nice. Okay, so I'm gonna actually change my background. Let's put some dreidels, just for a change. And so thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this class. I wish you Chanukah Sameach, happy Chanukah. And I hope you're going to have a wonderful celebration, even if we have to be separated because of the pandemic. We are not allowed to invite each other, but we can use Zoom, we can use FaceTime, and many other ways that we have to stay in touch and to celebrate together. So wish you all the best, stay safe, and remember we have our big celebration for Shari Zedek on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Same channel you're using to watch this class. We're going to have a big celebration with music and with stories and with arts and craft. It's going to be amazing. And don't miss it. We're putting together an amazing song with all the the clergy team. You'll see that I'm working on the collage, and to put it all together, it's going to be mind-blowing, that song of Chanukah. It's going to be premiered on Sunday, and then we are probably going to send it during Chanukah as a separate email so you can enjoy that song as well. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you all next week, and stay safe. Bye for now.